Hi, I'm Alan Hedblum. Welcome to our show, a place to feel like you belong. During our conversation, you'll notice words and phrases appearing at the bottom of the screen. These expressions will later be explained during our follow-up segment called What'd You Say? For now, let's welcome today's guest. Our guest today is Reyna Grande. Reyna is an award-winning novelist and memoirist. She's a recipient of the American Book Award, the El Premio Azatlan Literary Award, the Latino Book Award, and a finalist for the National Book Critics Circle Awards. We're so honored to welcome Reyna to our Grand Rapids studio via Skype. Reyna, thank you for joining us on Feel Like You Belong.
Well, thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Sure. So, Reyna, you've written fiction. You've written a memoir. Is it harder for writers to make things up or to tell the truth?
I think it could go either way. For me, when I was writing fiction, a lot of times it was really hard to know what was going to happen next and to make things up along the way. And when I was writing memoir, I did find it a lot easier, the fact that I already knew what was going to happen next because I was writing about my life. So in that respect, it was easier to write the memoir. But I would also say that emotionally, it was very challenging because I was writing about things that I had lived through that were very difficult. And as I was writing about them, it would be very hard to not get blocked by all of the emotions that I had tried to keep buried. Mm-hmm. So that to me was the most challenging aspect of writing the memoir, which in fiction, it doesn't get as emotionally challenging because you're writing fiction. Even if it is autobiographical, you have created a fictional character to stand in for you. So even when you write really difficult scenes, you can always tell yourself, well, that's happening to my character, not to me.
There's some distance, some comfort.
Yes.
Yeah, sure. And for our viewers who haven't yet read your book, I highly recommend it. Very, very emotional read for me. And, clearly you came from a difficult background, and you talk about that. It starts out at the beginning. You're 2 years old, and your father has left for el otro lado, the other side, to head to the U.S. to work. 2 years later, your mom leaves, and you're left with your grandmother. And you really had a difficult time. What struck me is you had maybe a lot of indignities early. I think I was feeling, putting myself in the place of that child. You were called orphans by the local kids because sometimes parents go to the U.S. to work and actually don't come back for their kids. And so this is the assumption, oh, they're leaving you. So this sort of indignity of being poor, being separated by this identity of being an orphan, your teacher, punishing you for you're left-handed and trying to write with your left hand. Why are you not a bitter person? Because reading that, I just felt one assault after the next. How can you not be bitter?
I think my writing has a lot to do with that. The fact that I've been able to write about these experiences has really helped me to understand why those things happened and to learn a lesson and see what that lesson is that I need to learn from all of those experiences. So for me, one of the greatest things about writing the memoir was that in writing about all those experiences, I was able to see that, yes, there were a lot of negative things that happened, But all of those things made me the person that I am today. And I really like the person that I am today. So instead of being bitter about all of those things, I'm actually quite grateful for them because they have made me who I am. And they did teach me a lot of lessons that I really needed to learn and that I'm grateful that I have learned them.
Now, your relationship with your parents, it comes out in your book, was not very smooth. Now that you're a mother, can you put those earlier feelings into some kind of perspective?
My relationship with my parents, it was very complicated. I think one thing I do want to point out is that the young Reina, the young me, had a different relationship than with her parents than the adult Reina. So it's very different now the way I am with my parents. Back then it was very hard because both my parents left me in Mexico to come here, and as a child I didn't understand why they had left. All I understood at that time was that, the reason why they had left was maybe because they didn't love me enough to stay with me. So as children, we understand things and we see things with our hearts, not so much with our minds. So the young Reina was always longing for her missing parents. And I would say that my childhood was defined by my parents' absence. And I think that even now, I still have that little girl inside of me that still yearns for those parents that never came back to me. As an adult now, I think I'm more mature now and I can understand now why my parents had to leave. As a parent myself, I understand that sometimes you need to do things to to take care of your children, to provide for them.
How would you say your experience has colored how you parent today?
Yeah, and now, being a writer, I have to travel a lot.
Okay.
And every time I have to travel, I have to leave my kids
The
behind.
distance.
Yes. So when I walk out the door of my house with my little suitcase and my children come running to me and they want to know how long I'm going to be gone, I think about my parents and I think about the fact that now as an adult, as a writer, I have to leave my kids to go work.
And years ago, those roles were reversed.
Yes, yes. So now I understand a lot more things that were going on with my parents than I did when I was a child.
Okay. What would you like younger readers to understand from reading your book?
I would like to help them to see that as children, a lot of times we're kind of helpless in what happens to us because we're little kids and we're at the mercy of the adults around us. But there comes a time in our life when we also need to take a stand and say, yes, things do happen to me because of the people around me, but I also have to take responsibility and I have to take charge of my life. And I have to make the decisions that will help me live a better life and get out of this situation. And I think for me, like, and you can see that in the book, is that for a big part of my childhood, I was at the mercy of the adults around me. So things were happening to me. But then there came a point in my young adulthood where I decided that the things that were going to happen were things that I was going to make happen. So I took charge of my life at that point.
I actually saw many glimpses of that with young Reyna, still back in Mexico, staying at your abuela's house, where you actually took charge. I mean, you sometimes got in trouble for it, you sometimes got punished for it, but you showed signs of the spunk even back then. So maybe again it was that difficult upbringing that made you, the sturdy person that you are today. Going back to Mexico, I was struck by the picture that you painted of true poverty. Can you explain to our viewers the difference between poverty in Mexico and poverty in the U.S.?
Yeah, I think, one of the greatest things about the US is that you can be born in poverty, but it doesn't mean you have to stay there in poverty. There's a lot of opportunities that can be found here, and it takes a lot of work, it takes a lot of determination. I'm not saying it's easy at all, but there's always that possibility of hope, that you could be an immigrant and, be poor, but if you work hard and you try to take advantage of opportunities and always look for those opportunities, there's always that possibility that you can, accomplish your goals and get out of that cycle of poverty. In Mexico, it's very difficult because a lot of people, they're born in poverty and they die in poverty. There are very few opportunities to get out of that cycle. And I see that a lot, even with my own family that I have back there. I have, even today, a lot of my cousins, they're still repeating that cycle of poverty, and that, they're never allowed to finish school because they have to go to work since they're little, and all they know is working, 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 and living hand to mouth, and they never know how they're going to survive the next day or the day after because there are no opportunities there. And a lot of that, of course, has to do with the government, that they don't provide opportunities for the citizens of Mexico so that they can get ahead. And one of the things I say in the book is that the poverty here is not compared to the poverty in Mexico. So when immigrants come here, they are very poor when they come here, but they will never be poor in the way that they were.
Do you have an example?
Yeah, well, even, something basic as having running water. In Mexico, even now, my family in Mexico, they don't have running water. They don't have that. And you come here and all of a sudden, even in this, the poorest of neighborhoods, you'll have running water.
I was struck by one of the passages in your book when you were hearing about how houses could be. And you said, yes, you could go into a bathroom and there's a shower and it's like standing outside and the rain is just coming down on you.
Yeah.
So thinking about, I guess, when you were a child and in this really dire situation, your parents were gone, you didn't know when they were coming back. Early they said, I'll be back next year, and then it turns into more years and more years. What gave you hope during those early years? And then after you came, what still gave you hope?
I try to hold on to that dream of having a family. And my older sister really helped me with that because she was the one that would always talk about what our family had been like before my parents left. And as the oldest, she was the one who remembered that. So I try to hold on to that dream of one day having a family again. And that was what gave me hope that one day my parents would come back and that we could be together again.
Mm-hmm.
And, that to me, that was the biggest tragedy with our immigrant experience, is that the family that we had in Mexico no longer existed by the time my siblings and I came to the United States. That family was completely gone. So in many ways, that family I dreamed of will always just be a dream. Mm-hmm. Because I will never get that back. But now as a parent, that's something that I really keep in mind with my own children, because I feel like, well, maybe I was cheated out of one family, but now I make my own family and I can do everything that I can to make sure that we stay together.
When you came to the U.S., there were several people who inspired you and encouraged you. In particular, one of them you recognized during a graduation speech that you made. You were actually selected for your undergraduate graduation ceremony to speak about a person who inspired you, and that was your teacher. Can you tell us about her?
Yeah, her name is Diana, and she's an English teacher at Pasadena City College. And I met her in the summer of 1994 when I was a student there at Pasadena City College. So I had English 1A with her. And she was the first teacher to ever tell me that I had writing talent. And she was the first one to ever suggest to me that I should be a writer. And she was a really wonderful person to have in my life because she really went above and beyond what any teacher would do. When I was having some really difficulties at home, she actually ended up opening her doors of her home to me. And I went to live with her and, just providing me a home, a safe environment where I could be. It really made a big difference in my life, and just having her there to show me the way, to help me to apply to universities, to make sure that I transferred from community college to a four-year university. That was a big help because my parents didn't even finish elementary school, so they would never have been able to help me with that process. And she really just was always there to encourage me to make sure that I got to where I needed to go.
Sure.
And even now, we're still really good friends. She's known me for half my life now, and I still have a really wonderful relationship with her.
Was she one of the inspirations for you to go into teaching? Because for a number of years, you became a teacher.
Yeah, and I'm still a teacher actually. Now I teach creative writing at UCLA Extension. So I've been a teacher since 2000. So that's been a very long time. And yeah, I mean, as a teacher, I always strive to be the kind of teacher that Diana is. I always want to make sure that, I give more of myself to my students so that I don't just think of them when they're in my classroom, but I want to be that kind of teacher that she was, to think of my students beyond the classroom walls, and to be there for them and to help them reach their own goals as well.
Now, you originally came into the U.S., you and your family, illegally. And you're now an American citizen. You're it's actually pride for us to say you are an American, because you represent some of the finest qualities of what this country really strives for in terms of achievement, and your writing is wonderful. But there are some people in this country that still create a very negative conversation around immigration. There are still approximately 11 million undocumented immigrants in this country. What would you like our American viewers to know, and maybe especially legislators in Washington right now who are having this conversation? What would you like them to know about these immigrants?
Yeah, I would like them to keep in mind like what you said, all the positive things that immigrants bring to this country. I think that immigrants are, very hardworking. When we come to the US, we come here for the same reasons that immigrants have come here since the beginning of this country, which is, to seek a better life for ourselves and for our families. And we do that through our hard work. Immigrants are always working, and they're always looking for ways to contribute to their communities, to give back to the country. And these are, immigrants who always bring fresh ideas here, a lot of the things that have happened in technology, all of these things, they come from immigrants.
Absolutely.
They're always trying to find ways
Absolutely.
to improve things, to make things better, to give back. So that's something for me as an immigrant, that's one of my priorities when, living here in the US, I'm always thinking about how can I give back? How can I, help my country to become better? And that's something that really drives me to do everything that I do in my everyday life.
That's awesome. Well, we need to wrap up here in a second. The theme of our show is belonging. For you, what creates belonging? How do you know that, yes, this is now my home, I live here, this place is also mine? How does a person create belonging?
Well, for me, belonging is really trying to find the similarities with other people. I think sometimes we focus too much on the differences, on how different we are. But what we really need to do is to look at our similarities and see, like, what do we have that's similar? What's our common ground? And go from there. And that's something that has really helped me because, as an immigrant, sometimes I do feel out of my element. Sometimes when I'm with people that, of other cultures, I feel a little afraid because I feel like, oh, we're different, we're not going to get along. But when I get past that fear and instead I start looking at what we have in common, then that's when I feel, no, we do belong. We do belong here. And our differences are actually our strengths because that's what, we learn from each other and we teach each other how to be better people. So when it comes to belonging, start with that. Start with looking at what do we have in common and where do we go from there.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, Reyna, this has been an absolutely delightful conversation. We look forward very much in 2 months to welcoming you in person in Grand Rapids. You know that your book has been chosen to be a part of a campus-wide discussion here in Grand Rapids at Grand Valley State University. Next month, and then the following month, you're coming to West Michigan for some speaking engagements, and I look forward to meeting you then in person and welcoming you to a slightly warmer climate than what we've got outside. The snow may be gone by then. So thank you so much for joining us.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. And to our viewers, please stick around because we'll be coming back shortly with our segment called What'd You Say? During our conversation with Reyna Grande, you heard us say, make things up. This is an informal way of saying invent stories or tell things that aren't true. And actually, we are contrasting fiction writing with nonfiction writing. And during fiction writing, you're actually making things up. And nonfiction writing is actually telling stories of things that are actual. Something you heard Reyna say was memoir. This is a word that originally comes from the French word meaning memory. And it's a book of someone's life experiences. We sometimes call it an autobiography. Something else that you heard Reyna say was yearn for. During our conversation, she said that she isn't the same today as the small child who yearned for parents who didn't come back. In this case, yearn for means to have a strong desire or a need to have something. If there were other expressions that you didn't understand during our conversation, you can look them up on our website under the What'd You Say section for the interview with Reyna Grande. Every language has a word for hard work. In English, we sometimes call it energy or effort. We have another expression representing hard work, but it isn't a real word. That expression is oomph. Oomph is what we say when we're lifting a heavy sofa, for example. Or maybe we're trying to loosen a stubborn lug nut when changing a flat tire. You might hear someone say, "You need to put a little oomph into it." That means you need to try harder, exert yourself. I was reminded of this expression when someone sent me this graphic the other day. Now, Americans often say that just trying alone isn't usually enough for success. You have to work hard to succeed. And that's the meaning behind this message. I like it when expressions sound like what they mean. Remember that the next time you're working hard but not quite succeeding. Maybe you need to just put a little more oomph into it. One popular type of American television show is the situation comedy, or sitcom for short. These are typically 30-minute weekly shows with regular characters living their normal, funny lives. Viewers who follow a sitcom get to know and love the characters on the show and want to see how they're doing every week. One very popular American sitcom was Friends. It was broadcast weekly from 1994 to 2004 and is still popular in reruns. The show is about 6 friends who live in the same apartment building. 3 women, Phoebe, Rachel, Monica, and 3 men, Joey, Chandler, and Ross. The program is about the lives, jobs, romances, and worries of 6 20-something adults in New York City. Learning about American humor involves understanding American cultural rules of friendship, work, dating, and the many other human interactions that exist. Understanding the culture involves knowing American English, its slang, and its double meanings. When you begin to understand all these things, you begin to understand why Americans laugh at sitcoms like Friends. To increase your listening skills, we recommend you watch shows like Friends, preferably with your good American friends who can explain what's happening on the screen. To get you started, we have excerpted a short conversation from a Friends episode on our website under the What's So Funny section. Along with the text for the conversation, we provide explanations of the jokes. So let us know how you like this short clip, and tell us your favorite American TV show as well. In the meantime, happy viewing and happy laughing.